I played College Football 25 last week early at EA, and let me tell you, I have a lot of controversial thoughts. I'm going to talk about almost everything that I experienced, which is going to reveal everything that we know about the game up to this point, and paint the full picture of what College Football 25 is really like. Now, EA just dropped a 34-page deep dive that's loaded, so I'll be covering that and the new trailer with gameplay, but I also saw and experienced things that aren't included. One of those was the recreation of the infamous Mo Bamba false start clip at Penn State. During a presentation, they showed us a recreation of that in-game, and it left me with chills along with everybody else in the room, so that's when it really hit me how crazy this game is about to be. Don't get me wrong though, there's still some issues that the game has that I'm not afraid to mention, and I'll be working with EA on some things, but they still want me to have an opinion and voice my concerns. When I was there, I was honest with the dev team about things that I thought would ruin the game, but they were very receptive of it, and one of the big things that scared me was X factors and abilities coming over from Madden, so you can imagine my reaction when they first mentioned abilities during their presentation. They are in College Football 25, but X factors are not, and the way that they put them in the game is actually really neat. The first thing I want to point out is you're never guaranteed a specific result or animation just based on an ability, so that's big for me, and their blog goes on to say that they're introducing 80 new abilities, the majority of which are completely new to the football gaming space. Again, they're reiterating that they're purely situational boost and there aren't any guarantees with them, and just that they're categorized into two different groups, physical and mental, which I just touched on, and all of them are further divided into 4 tiers: bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. If you've ever played a 2K game, my best interpretation of it is it's just like player badges in that, and I'll get more into my experience with them, but whenever we played, they weren't too overpowered. Anyway, the most a player can have at any given time is 5 physical and 3 mental abilities, and their aim is to provide players with increasing depth as they progress through those tiers. You can go super deep into them as I continue to break down this blog, but the last thing that I think is important to mention here is a player's abilities are solely determined by their archetype, and I really want to make sure that I reiterate these are not game breaking and they don't guarantee a specific result. I say that over and over because I was legitimately scared when they first brought this up until I got to actually play with it. And inside the game, you're going to be able to find a chart like this if you're curious what all 80 abilities are and what happens at each different tier. I will admit it was a little bit overwhelming to see when I first saw it, but it's neat, and before we get into anything else, I actually want to break down one of these abilities. This covers the field general one, and if you pause the video, you'll be able to read each of these bullet points if you really care to. But basically, from the lower tiers, blitzers are highlighted but only after the snap, and then by the time you get down to the platinum tier, it allows you to see a lot more things before the play. What tier of ability a player has is all determined by what their stats are, and I can't 100% confirm this, but just by talking with one of the devs, it seems like your abilities are decided by what stat you have in 1 or 2 categories. So let's say Travis Hunter is 84 stamina, and that puts him in the silver tier for recoup. If he gets like 85 stamina, maybe he'll move up to gold, and if he clears 90 stamina, that'd probably put him up into platinum. That's how I understood it, and whenever we played the game, it just made the best players play like the best players out there on the field, but again, didn't guarantee a certain result. They've even shown us what it'll look like in game with this screenshot right here, and there were so many sick highlights in the gameplay trailer featuring different abilities, which are pretty much just like 2K badges with no guarantees and just make the best players really feel like it. What's wild is this is literally just one of the like 20 different things that have been revealed I'm going to cover in this video, and this is just a minor thing, but the display over the team select screen was seriously beautiful even if they don't have the ESPN branding, and I'm thrilled with how the score bug looks too. It's a unique design for every team, but if you can't already tell, you'll see very soon that this game is nothing like a Madden reskin. I also told some of the devs that I was concerned they might play the same since it is on the same Frostbite engine, but again, they reassured me very quickly that the gameplay is much quicker, and then I got to experience it for myself, and there were so many breakaway plays against some of the other guys I played against. I'm pretty sure NotTheExpert already talked about it on Twitter, and he did. In just 1 quarter, he ran for over 200 yards with Auburn against Deion Walker and my Kentucky Wildcats defense, but I was able to respond back by bombing him over the top with Berrien Brown, who for Kentucky fans is so quick, and all of the fast gameplay and breakaway plays honestly reminded me a lot of NCAA Football 14. I said I'd be fair though, so even though I have been hyping it up for a bit, I'm also going to mention things like high school not being in Road to Glory, and this got leaked, which sounds like a bummer, but you can still decide what type of prospect you start with. I think the ranges are from like 65 overall to 79, and we weren't able to hop into this mode ourselves, but once you all see all the other stuff that is in Road to Glory that they told us about, I think you're going to be very excited. More will come in the future, kind of like this huge gameplay drop today, and one of my controversial opinions is I don't think I'm going to miss high school being in Road to Glory. I know that's kind of a big part of getting recruited, but at least on NCAA Football 14, it was really dull. You could have a scholarship offer to Alabama in like 3 games, even playing on Heisman, and if you wanted to roleplay as a recruit that wasn't very good, maybe start as a 1-star, it was almost impossible to do. You would get scholarship offers no matter what. I understand why people liked it, and it would definitely be cool to see what they could do with it now in 2024, but you never know. It's something that they could add to future releases, and there's a reason that I am so confident whenever I talk about this game, and it's because I met all of the dev team. I think one thing that gets really overshadowed is EA brought over people from College Football Revamped that built the mod that I've been playing on my channel for the last 2 years. And they did that just because they were so passionate about college football, not knowing that it would lead to this opportunity, and let me tell you, they had a huge impact on this game. But I think the best thing about the entire thing of being at EA was just seeing the dev team like grinning ear to ear as we react to actually playing. They were so passionate, and that level of detail and care really shows whenever you have teams like Arkansas State's water fountains going off when they score a touchdown. And I got a little sidetracked there, but I'm just trying to convey why I know this game is going to be amazing besides the fact that I played it and saw it firsthand. Seeing the behind the scenes of what goes into making a video game, especially one that looks as realistic as the ones they put out, was super eye-opening. And I'm honestly super thankful that you all put me in the position to have that type of opportunity as well. But now we should talk about wear and tear, because this has another big impact on the game. The feature pretty much just ensures that every hit matters and not all hits are created equal. It is definitely a brand new and unique damage system that adds a whole new layer of depth and strategy to your gameplay. This is very accurate of what it is. And let's just say it is designed to simulate the real world effects of fatigue and damage on a player's performance, and it operates on a play-to-play and game-to-game basis, which then carries over to Dynasty and Road to Glory. I even saw an effect in the few Play Now games that I hopped into. But basically, if your quarterback has thrown the ball like 40 plus times in a game and has taken some big hits, don't expect him to be at 100% the following week in a Dynasty. And this is why I need to learn how to slide, because there's subtle gameplay components such as getting the ball out early and covering the ball and getting out of bounds that will really impact how much damage your player takes. Before I even try to describe how it works, I feel like I have to show you all this screenshot, because it really breaks down as you take damage to each body part, you're going to lose stats in certain categories. And that pretty much sums up this entire section here. As an example, if your quarterback's throwing arm receives a significant hit, you're going to notice a decrease in your throw power and accuracy. And then the same is true for your legs. It could make you move slower if you take a lot of big hits there. So you have to be very careful about the type of situations that you're putting your players into, and it's no longer just about getting a roll of the dice on an injury. It kind of just builds up over time, and you don't want this stuff to carry over week to week in Dynasty or Road to Glory. But from my perspective, whenever I played with it in game, it wasn't too game breaking. I would maybe lose like 1 or 2 in a stat category at a time, but I was also very careful to not take a bunch of huge hits because I knew this feature was in the game. What's so interesting about it is recovery has to be a critical part of the feature as well, and you can regain your health back when you're not on the field during timeouts at halftime and in between weeks too. Another thing is we have to be cautious of our players' workload, because the worse a body part is damaged, the slower it's going to recover. And this is what's going to make the game so much fun, especially in Dynasty, because this encourages strategic planning and management of all of your players to ensure the best performance out of them. What's nice is outside of the quarterback and offensive line, teams are going to substitute around the fatigue, so you don't have to micromanage it. And not that this list of places that you can find it in means anything to you all right now, but there are a lot of places to track it in. Again, when I used it, it wasn't anything that's game breaking, but with these changes, wear and tear definitely adds even more depth to a player's gameplay. And hopefully you all are starting to realize all these new things that they have added to separate this game gameplay wise from the Madden game, besides it just being faster and having a bunch of different animations. I'd also like to mention that with wear and tear involved, they also had to overhaul fatigue, and their main goal with it was to make it more realistic to snap counts at the college level. For example, let's say a running back gets 3 consecutive carries for positive yards, you're going to notice them huffing and puffing in the pre-play clip. And then on the next carry, they're probably going to come out of the game, but because of how they've redone the fatigue, you're only going to sit out for most likely a single play. That's really big, because on NCAA Football 14, you would have your players auto sub out whenever they got too fatigued, but sometimes they'd miss like 3-4 plays in a row. And I know I'm probably going to say this a ton in the video, but I really like the display that they have in this game, especially from the play calling screen, which is like your command center. But before we get into the next big addition, I also want to just say I didn't hear a single thing about Ultimate Team the entire time that I was there. Take that as you will, and the menus were also very quick and responsive. I was concerned about this. I voiced my concerns to the dev team because of previous experience on another football game, and the menus were actually really good. You're probably starting to see I went in a little bit scared, and I've come out so pumped up and amped up for this game because of how happy I am with what I played on. It's so nuts though, because all of the features are just going to keep on adding up. Another neat thing that they added was they changed the kicking from NCAA Football 14, and it makes sense because college kickers are not good and they miss a lot of field goals, especially short ones. Being able to drill 63-yarders whenever you want on NCAA Football 14 with no issues was not realistic, so that's why you'll see that they have completely overhauled the kicking meter here. It's genuinely difficult. I didn't hit a perfect kick once and I played for hours. I know the kicking thing's a smaller detail than some of the previous things I've listed, but it was something that really caught me off guard, and I was glad that they nailed because they wanted it to be realistic. If you're super curious about how it works, you can always read this entire post. I'm not going to go through every single thing, but the one thing I do want to also point out is hitting in the red represents an overkick, and you don't want to do that because that can mess you up. So that was something new that they added to the game, but one thing they did bring back from NCAA Football 14, at least in my opinion, was the juke moves. I personally didn't get great at them on the new game yet, but I did watch Good Game Bro put in some nasty work on the sticks. And stuff like the spin move isn't slow or lethargic in this title, it's actually really quick and tight. Now it's something that's a lot easier to show than tell, so I'm sure even though they didn't go in depth on it in this article, they're going to do that whenever they show the gameplay. So have fun exploring that, and shout out to EA for adding another sick addition. I'll also say, one thing I didn't notice was they said that they introduced all new specific run styles for different archetypes in the game, and I just didn't pay attention to it. But it's also a small detail that I wasn't searching for, and I'm sure if you are paying attention, you could definitely notice. I mean, I'm not just going to sit here and lie to you all and be like it was amazing. I genuinely did not see it. But of course, it's going to provide a more in-depth and personalized gaming experience, so that's a good thing that they put in. Now, one of the staples of college football is definitely the option game, and it really threw me off at first because they reversed the controls from 14 with it, but they made it much more realistic. Basically, to keep it simple, the first thing that they did was make the mechanic mirror the real-life quarterback and running back exchange, which it didn't do in 14. So just like in an actual game, the quarterback's going to place the ball in the running back's belly with the intent that he's going to hand it off to him, but if the read key comes down, he's going to have to pull the ball by pressing an X key. On 14, if you wanted to give it to the running back, you'd have to hit that button, but now if you want to keep it, you have to hit that button. And I like that. It's going to simplify our reads while also making RPOs, which we're not very used to from 14, much more usable. They've added a lot of controls so you can change in live time what you want to do. And then this is another little tweak that I didn't expect them to mention, but you can have different pitches whenever running the option just so there's more depth to the gameplay. Holding down L1 or LB will result in a strong pitch, while a quick tap will be a swift pitch, and there is a difference between the two. The quick tap one is pretty much just useful for tight spots, but it might not hit the pitch back in stride, and then if you hold down the button for a strong pitch, you'll want to do that when there's ample space between you and the approaching defender, which does require a little bit more time, but it also offers precise accuracy and velocity. Fake pitching is even back activated by double tapping L1 or LB, which I didn't even know you could do in previous titles, and everything that they've added has just been to refine the gameplay and make it a lot more smoother and enjoyable to run stuff like the option. We'd even get a little bit of it in the gameplay trailer, but it's hard to get a feel for how it plays when you watch it, and as somebody that didn't enjoy recent Madden gameplays, I really enjoyed the gameplay on this game, so take that as you will. It's not just offense that has gotten some upgrades though, the defense has also seen some different changes, and this is pretty similar to 14 where there's just a read key that determines what you do on the option, whether or not you crash or stay at home, but the computer is so smart now that when on the wide hash marks, they're going to react differently than whenever the offense is close to a first down or something else. Pitch keys also have more varied behavior, which is definitely needed, with the ability to bluff whether they're playing the quarterback or the running back. And I definitely noticed that when I played the game, it wasn't as easy to just know 100% what the right move to make was. Now, I've already said I struggled to run the option because it confused me so much, the new controls with them reversing them. So I didn't run for 200 yards like NotTheExpert did versus me, but I did figure things out eventually. For all of you that play this game a little bit more competitively, you will notice that they have removed base alignment, which never worked greatly, but now they've added disguising coverages, which is a super cool feature. This is something I wish I had a screenshot of, but you just have to visualize it. And of course, whenever you're on the field, there is a button that would allow you to command your secondary to position in the range of so many different disguised looks, and they can range from a high pressure cover 0 blitz all the way to a backed off cover 4 look. This is something I wish I tried more of whenever I was playing the game, but we were just so excited to witness all the atmospheres, the new features, the gameplay, and disguising coverages will be a great way to confuse your friends in online dynasties. I'm not shutting up anytime soon either. There's so many more features, including something that's called Revamped passing, and this was something that took me a while to figure out. This is just a very long way of saying you have almost full control of where the ball goes, what the trajectory is, and this is a new feature that really overhauled all of their passing trajectories, so you're going to see stuff you've never seen in a football game before. When I was throwing up deep bombs to Barry and Brown, sometimes it felt like the ball was lofted in the air for like 10 seconds, and if I put a little more power on it, it got there a little bit quicker with a lot lower trajectory. It's kind of funny though, because if you tap it super lightly, you could throw a slant across the field that just floats in the air forever. And throw power no longer refers to the distance of the throw, but how hard you can throw it, which changes things too. Depending on what quarterback you use, what his throw power is, how you're throwing the ball with him, those balls are going to travel way different than others. And as wide open as the gameplay felt at times, it's also important to maintain balance, so for years they did mention that players could just hold a bullet pass with little to no consequences, but that's where this passing meter changes things. The distance of the throw and the quarterback's attributes and abilities will all affect the accuracy of a pass, and before I really take a dive into it, you're going to take a look at this screenshot and see that meter. What you really want to avoid is that red section. There's going to be 3 colors on the screen. The sizes of the sections all depend on like the same things I just mentioned, your attributes, your abilities, throwing distance, and other factors, and there's so much more from that, but landing in the blue is what increases the chances of a safe, accurate ball, while landing in the yellow could mean more uncertainty from your ideal target. Like I said though, you do not want to get into that red category, and quarterbacks with weaker arms or lower throw accuracy ratings will have larger red sections. It's not different from real life. Trying to push the ball downfield consistently with a quarterback who has a weak arm is just not a great move. I think once you all get this down, you're going to really enjoy it. I did, but it took me a while to figure it out, and they also even mentioned that they've updated the pump fake mechanic, but never in my life have I tried to use a pump fake mechanic in a video game, so I'm just going to ignore that section. I don't think it would ever actually work to fool the defense because the computer knows exactly what you're doing, but maybe it will do something, and I probably should have tried it when I had the game. If you thought all the features were done though, there is still a ton more, and when they started listing all of these off during our presentation at EA in the most respectful way possible, I thought they were never going to stop talking. It just kept going, but it was also super exciting. That level of detail and new features can be seen across the entire game, and I think the stadiums are a perfect example. There's like 150 of them that are almost perfect replicas, and it's not just visually but sound-wise too. Every single time you play at a different place, you feel like you're in a completely different environment, and even though this college game is going to sell less copies than Madden, it's going to sell less copies than the soccer series, FC. EA's put more stadiums in this game than any of their other titles that I'm aware of. I mean, Madden has like 30 something, FC has 60, but they went above and beyond. You all will see more of it as more things get released, and really nailed all 134 atmospheres. I think when stuff looks this good, this realistic, it's hard to not just sit here in amazement at what the dev team pulled off in a few years. And the level of detail is just going to continue to get deeper, with the next one being the pre-snap recognition features. Basically, just to sum all of this up, a senior will see things on the field that a freshman wouldn't, and they'll also experience different environments in different ways, as you can see that they have brought back something similar to the hot and cold system with the confidence and composure. Experience would obviously play a huge role in this feature, and a freshman is going to have more volatile swings compared to a seasoned senior. But to be honest, in my short time playing, this is another thing I didn't notice much of because I wasn't searching for it. As crowd level increases though, I definitely could see this being something that has an impact on certain players, especially in a dynasty, but it was also balanced enough to where it wouldn't obnoxiously stand out like 90% of the time, which I think is a good thing. Those rare moments for an away team on a 3rd and 15 with the crowd roaring need to be special, and plays like that are going to be where you're able to notice some of these more in-depth features. As I'm saying that, it continues to touch on the exact same thing I was talking about, like a rivalry matchup. And not only do events such as scoring touchdowns lift the morale of potentially your entire team, but also it's going to have a stat boost to some of your players. For example, a scrambling quarterback is going to have improved ball security, while a field general is going to benefit from improved throw accuracy if your player starts to cook. This is something you'll be able to track through certain coach vision things that we'll touch more on later. And there's honestly so many things going on behind the scenes with this gameplay determining outcomes that you would never think about. Whenever you played NCAA Football 14, you could just have a freshman do the exact same thing as a senior. And it's not just a marketing ploy whenever they say all 22 players on the field feel very differently than each other. Whenever I played, you could definitely notice the big difference between the stars and then the guys that aren't that good. You can feel the difference too, and this is just another spot where abilities, especially the mental ones, can come into play. It's all starting to become connected, and then as you continue to read, you'll notice that coach abilities are also in the game, which ties into Dynasty that I can't touch much on right now, but I'm going to speedrun everything that's already been leaked. We already know that you can have up to 32 team leagues in both online and offline, and those dynasties can go up to 30 years in the future, which is honestly plenty. I don't mind that they cut it down from 60. I never got past 20 whenever I was playing, but if you're going to be upset over anything, it's probably the fact that there's not going to be cross-play in online Dynasty, and they could always add it in the future like they did with Madden's connected franchise, but I'd rather them just make sure at least whenever this game launches, things aren't broken. I'll also say all the conference customization features that were in 14's Dynasty mode are in this one too, even going a little bit deeper, and you can start a Dynasty as either a head coach or an offensive or defensive coordinator. There's also a massive coach skill tree that when I talked to the devs, they told me that there was no meta to it, and there's a bunch of different paths that you could take, but no matter what you do, it's really hard to unlock everything, and you can fire or hire coordinators in Dynasty, which you couldn't do on 14. They've also coded the non-conference schedules to accurately regularly generate all the way up to 2032, but you can change those games if you want, and they pretty much just want Dynasty mode to be a sandbox for us. I'm so excited to go deeper into all of that in the future, but for now I can't. I have to dance around to the stuff that's already been put out, so I will just say recruiting's like a balanced mix of what 11 and 14 had. The transfer portal is in there too, but NIL is not, and even if the NCAA can't understand NIL, how on earth is a dev team supposed to code that in, especially when it's changed so much over the last 2 years? I wasn't expecting it, but what might be a disappointment is you can't export your draft classes from the college game over to Madden, but they made up for it because you can take your Road to Glory player over to Madden. There's a lot of great things that come with real players being in the game, but the downside with that is they don't have the rights to use those same college players in Madden, so that's why you can't export draft classes. EA's trying to let us customize as much as they can, which is very obvious as they brought back Team Builder for Dynasty, which really gets me excited, and we'll know a lot more about that, plus all of the other game modes the closer we get to release, which, trust me, is worth the wait. With the speedrun of stuff that's already been leaked out of the way though, back to the stuff we got gameplay and a huge article on, and one of those is Coach Vision that covers a ton of different things. Basically, it's just a way to see things pre-play, like this is what the composure and confidence screen looks like, and then there's also a wear and tear one, which is a completely different look than what this is. Back to composure and confidence though, the red bars mean your players are getting hot, which is good, and then the blue bars mean your players are getting cold, which is not. Then there's the ability screen, which allows you to see all the abilities for players on both sides of the ball, but this is one of the few things that I will criticize. It's a little bit confusing if you don't know what all those logos mean. The only reason that's not a big issue is these abilities aren't guarantees that things will happen. It's pretty much just on there because they have a certain stat that's really high. So it is what it is, and then there's the matchup thing that they brought back from 14, but the display is so much better. It's also nuts that I've made it this far in the video and we still hadn't touched on home field advantage yet. Now I think there would have been some riots if they didn't bring this back, but I've already alluded to how difficult it is to play at certain stadiums, like going to Penn State with them blasting Mo Bamba. Whenever they recreated it, it literally gave me chills. I already told you all that, but all the modifiers that they mentioned in this article of things you might experience because of the home crowd is nothing new. We already saw that in their first drop, and if there's anything that you're going to pick up on here, all the previous features that I've mentioned just work really well together in harmony. Their main goal was to recreate the college environment, and I think they nailed it. But what you all might really like is they brought back the stadium pulse meter from NCAA Football 06, and that's the first college football game I remember playing as a kid. Just like back then, now if you hit your right stick, you're going to be able to pump up the crowd, making them even louder. And of course, they just want to make sure that you know all the home field advantage effects are only going to impact the visiting team clearly. This next feature though is probably going to make a lot of Madden players upset, because if you look at the hot routes on this screen, you'll see that you can put any route that you want out there on the field, no matter who the QB is. Yes, that even includes the halfback angle route every single time, and I definitely abused it. But there is a counter that I learned to it very quickly, and that is the home crowd. Whenever I played NotTheExpert, I was Kentucky, he was Auburn, he had the home field advantage, and because Barry and Brown is so quick, I was trying to hot route him onto a streak on every single play, but whenever it got super loud, it wouldn't actually put the hot route in the game. If he was originally going to run a slant, he'd still run a slant. It was like he couldn't hear me telling him to run the new route. So your initial play call still matters. You can't just change your routes all the time, and that's why I don't think this is too overpowered. I also wish I could say that I tried the new Bang 8 route, but I didn't even notice that was in the game. But I did figure out how to use the new custom stims hot route, which is just a new feature that allows you to adjust the distance of a receiver's route, so you could make a comeback route a lot deeper or a lot shorter. This was actually a really neat feature because now you can make a wide receiver run wherever you want him to on the field, and then on the defensive side of things, there is also a risk factor associated with run commit that has been toned down. In previous games, you were pretty much guaranteed to give up a touchdown if you guessed wrong, but now on this title instead, there is a penalty, but the mechanic's only going to affect the players positioned in the box. That means when you run commit, your DBs aren't just going to be beaming for the backfield, they're still going to play coverage on their guy. And just for Madden players' sake, I'm really hoping some of these new features get carried over to that game as well. My thought process is if they can add it to one and it works well, then they can probably implement it into another. And if this game is a reskin of anything, I almost want to say it's just a reskin of all the best things that they could pull out of any sports game over the last 20 years. There's so many things that have come from different types of titles that they've moved over to this college game. And I don't know for 100% certainty, but this new switch stick thing whenever you're changing players on defense could have come from another title too. Basically, the quick summary of this is if you get stuck on like your defensive lineman, you can just quickly flick the right stick and then move up to your linebacker. But as nice of an addition as this was, I am so used to how I've played games in the past that I didn't even use it on the college game. Once I get past breaking my muscle memory, I'm sure I'm going to appreciate the fact that it's in there, but I can only say so much because I wasn't able to effectively use it in the few hours I played. Also, at this point, I can't believe that I'm still going, but there's another 12 pages, and there's so many more things to cover. It's just nuts how much they've added, especially to the gameplay. There's over 1,500 new plays, more than 50 formations, and then each team is going to obviously have a very specific team playbook that's going to reflect their current offensive and defensive trends, which I just used Kentucky, but it did look accurate, and they're all based on a variety of playstyles such as the air raid, multiple pistol, kind of like what you saw in NCAA Football 14. I'll definitely say they're more unique though, and there is a new type of trick play that I did run once, just not effectively. The problem with trying things for the first time is you don't exactly know what to expect, so I kind of messed some things up. But there are so many neat things, especially in all the different playbooks, including the addition of trick plays like the double pass, reverse pass, you know, all the good stuff. If you're a super nerd like me, you're going to read through this entire article and see all the little bits and pieces that they talked about, but at the end of the day, it's more something that you have to see with the actual gameplay and not just off of screenshots and words. I haven't touched on the defensive playbooks yet though, and there are some new formations that definitely weren't in 14. They might have been Madden, but I've never even heard of the 3-3-5 tight. There's a lot more variety even on that side of the ball, so I'm excited to dive into all of that too. But all of the features at this point are never ending. They've included now 2 different types of no huddle with a turbo tempo type that they also have in here. And with just the basic no huddle tempo, players rush back to the line, offering the traditional tempo option on Y triangle, which they did make more realistic. You can audible to other plays in that same formation, but you can't just select from an array of them when you no huddle. As for the turbo tempo that I didn't even know was in the game, there was so much they've added they didn't even cover this in the presentation. But apparently you are just trading the ability to hot route and audible at the line of scrimmage for the advantage of the defense not being set, and this would have been such a cool feature to use if I knew it was there. It even makes the defensive line being slower. This is how I would have won games. And of course, if you want to define one of these as your main play style, you're going to be able to change that on the play calling screen, kind of like you can do in Madden. Just by taking a look at this screenshot, my assumption is it's going to be in coach adjustments, but there's just so much depth to this game, and of course the AI is going to replicate whatever the school does in real life. I'm going to be really interested to see how everything plays out though. Because of the new AI, the clock management's not going to be completely broken like it was on 14, which makes some of the tournaments interesting. And it also says in situations where players or the AI are about to audible, players will glance towards the sideline looking at the play caller holders, and if the defense is caught looking to the sideline, they will be slower to get off the ball. This screenshot right here kind of captures it. You can see multiple Georgia players looking over to the sideline. And by the way, there's been so many things that I didn't even have a chance to mention the scoreboard. I don't care that there's no ESPN presentation on it. It still looks incredible. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, we're getting into even more features that I didn't experience. There's just so much depth to this game. And it's kind of fun that even though I played it, I'm finding out more and more things that I didn't even know existed because they didn't have enough time to talk about all of it. It says, making a debut in this year's edition, the real-time coaching feature is an adaptive coaching engine designed to authentically enhance both offensive and defensive CPU gameplay. Okay, I don't even think I need to read all this. It's probably just the computer being a little bit more aggressive in the right situations, just being smarter with the AI, and apparently they can make exact adjustments just like the user might do in an online game against somebody else. This is just one of the numerous reasons that I'm probably going to struggle playing on Heisman for a very long time. And the more that I read about this defensive AI, the more I realize why I was struggling when I wasn't playing on the hardest difficulty when I got to touch the game. All of that's probably boring to most of you, but if you want to pause, you can read it all. It's just really cool to see the implementation of this foundational feature that's going to make the game so much more realistic. And now we have a section called In the Trenches. All the features that have been mentioned above are great, but we know that championships are won in the trenches. This is actually a really cool feature. I'm excited to talk about this one. I'm glad that they mentioned it because like this article says, if your offensive line can't hold up, nothing else matters. And that's why if you're somebody playing like a South Alabama versus Michigan, you're really going to struggle because of how lopsided it is. Whenever I played on NCAA Football 14, I feel like I could go in with any team and probably put up a decent fight. But on this game, if I'm like, all right, Eastern Michigan, time to go see if we can win at Penn State whiteout game, I'm going to lose by 50. The reason for that is some of the stuff that they've mentioned here, but they also want to talk about one of their new pass protection schemes. And I'm super glad that they added this because it allows you to see who your blockers are going to pick up and who might be a free rusher. We've now gotten into the meat of this article as we're talking about there being 400 new animations for blocking, but I can vouch for it. The pass rushers definitely had a lot more animations I'd never seen before, and they looked incredible. There was a bunch of stuff that I would have never seen in a Madden game. And at this point, I just want you all to get your hands on it like I was able to because it was just incredible. I think through all the depth in this article and also by seeing gameplay today, you all are starting to realize why I've been so hyped up about this. And we all know that on NCAA Football 14, the weather would drive me absolutely nuts, but it is even worse on this game. Now, I can't say I experienced it because I didn't have enough time to test it out. I didn't play any games in the rain or the snow, but of course, with harsh weather conditions, that's going to affect the movement of our players, and it's going to be challenging to plant and cut in these conditions. The passing game's going to take a considerable impact, which even happened on 14, but you could at least plant. There wouldn't be many issues with that. And not only are you going to drop passes a lot easier, but you're going to notice wobbly passes, impacted pass accuracy, and throw power with some other things happening too. Of course, there's my favorite thing, the chance of increased drops and fumbles are going to rise, but this all makes sense. It's very realistic. It just drives me insane when it happens to me. I could be more cautious though, and whenever handling the ball, use RB or R1 to cover it up. And I think they've outdone themselves whenever it comes to the weather. It's also going to impact our special teams. You're going to feel the hits to your kick power and accuracy, and it's going to be hard to kick in heavy rain or snow. I wanted special teams to be a challenging task. That's what they did. I struggled whenever using it. And again, they are just nailing realism after realism to make this game feel like an authentic college football experience. There's also the little things like you could notice in the trailer, 1 foot sideline catch animations, because of course in the NFL it's 2 feet. And half of this stuff is new to me or stuff that I would just never notice. There's going to be different defensive pursuits, but then there's also Playmaker, which they never mentioned. I'm pretty sure that comes over from Madden just to kind of have any route happen from a failed one. And this is important. Play action, whenever it's called in a run situation like a first down or less than 3 yards to a first down, it's going to affect the defense. They're just reiterating again and again that they're going to nail the realism. But we are still not done, ladies and gentlemen. One of the fun features that they brought over from the FIFA game, at least in my opinion, was the post-play creativity in our hands. They want us to celebrate every time you score or make a big play, and there's a whole new celebration system that works like the FIFA game. From a variety of 20 different touchdown celebrations, 4 interception celebrations, and first down ones at 2. I didn't know the exact buttons to hit whenever I was using them, but I did do the Heisman pose accidentally at one point, which was neat. And they kind of want you all to just have fun exploring all the options, testing them out, but if you're curious about how to do a certain one, you can check that out in the menu screen. As for victory formation, we all know that feeling, a pivotal run on 3rd or 4th and short, the opposing team is out of timeouts and our running back just gets enough to seal the game. As long as football has existed, after this game-clinching moment, you've had to sit under center for 30+ seconds just to take 3 consecutive kneel downs. Well, they're happy to say those days are over, and as soon as the game is mathematically done, just take a knee, players will come onto the field and will simulate the following kneel downs. That is actually really sick. I didn't even notice that. Whenever I beat Louisville with Kentucky, I use knees. But this happens in real life. There'll be like 15 seconds left on the clock. They'll take the knee and players will start walking out onto the field. That is such a cool feature. I feel like this is the level of detail that people were begging for. This does not feel anything like Madden. Hopefully you all are really starting to capture that. And just like that, the blog post has come to an end. The level of dedication and commitment from our team in delivering this makes me proud and fortunate to be a part of it. Again, all the devs I met were amazing. And if you all want to read all this, I'd highly recommend it. This was their game. We stand by that. They are on our side. They want us to have a great product. Literally, everybody on that college team at EA is awesome, including Scott, who was able to write this article. And as I was filming this, a tweet started getting around about some minor issues with the Red River Showdown. Within an hour, though, somebody at EA told me it was already fixed, and that's exactly what you want out of a dev team. So I promise I'm not overhyping them, and I'll just be saying more stuff about the game on Twitter than I can put into a video. In conclusion, College Football 25 was never going to be perfect, but I feel like they got super close to it. And there's still a lot of stuff that hasn't come out yet that you'll see in the future. I can't say anything about it yet, but it makes it very hard for me to play NCAA Football 14. So I'm sure you can see the excitement on my face, ready for this new game. Again, thank you all so much for putting me in the position that you have, and I'm ready to have a great football season with all of you.